The Academy of Conquest stood at the heart of the Dominion's capital, a city of spires that pierced the clouds and glimmered like molten glass under the twin suns. It was the most prestigious military institution in the galaxy, where every race sent its brightest warriors, strategists, and leaders to prove their worth. Humans, however, were not among the respected ones. They were new to the Dominion, fragile newcomers from a small blue planet on the outer rim. Their bodies lacked the armored skin of the Vraks, the psychic power of the Lissari, or the fluid strength of the Shay. Among hundreds of towering otherworldly cadets, the few human students looked like children playing among giants. And yet, that morning when the instructor announced, "A transfer student from Earth will join your class today," the hall fell into amused silence. Everyone turned to see her. She was small, smaller than most of them expected. Her hair was dark, her uniform pressed neatly, her hands clasped in front of her as if she were praying for the ground to open up and swallow her whole. Her eyes, however, were different, not defiant, not fearful, simply calm. "State your name," barked Instructor Thalen, a Vrak whose voice carried like thunder. "Lena," she said softly. That was it. No title, no bravado, just Lena. The class chuckled. Even the Lissari, beings of light and elegance, smiled behind their shimmering veils. Humans were amusing to them, expressive, emotional, and fragile. Thalen cleared his throat. "You will find, Cadet Lena, that this academy does not favor the weak, but you are welcome to try." "Yes, Instructor," she replied politely. That politeness bothered some of them. It was the kind of calm that came from someone who didn't seek to prove herself, or perhaps someone who didn't need to. The morning drills began. The training yard was an expanse of black stone, wide enough to host a small fleet. Cadets lined up for the endurance course, a gauntlet of shifting platforms, plasma walls, and gravity traps. It was a nightmare even for seasoned warriors. Lena stood at the edge, watching. When the whistle blew, the alien cadets shot forward, leaping, bounding, soaring, their movements fast and powerful. She waited until the crowd had thinned, then began at her own pace. She didn't sprint. She didn't roar. She simply moved, precise, quiet, focused. Her form was minimal, almost effortless. But what startled everyone was that she never faltered. While others stumbled against the gravity shifts or got scorched by plasma arcs, Lena passed through each obstacle like water flowing downhill. By the time she reached the end, silence had replaced laughter. Instructor Thalen looked down at his datapad, then back at her. "You completed the course faster than every cadet here." Lena blinked. "Oh, I just followed the rhythm." "The rhythm?" "Yes," she said softly. "Everything moves with a rhythm. Once you find it, you just move along." Some of the cadets exchanged uneasy glances. Among them was Koran, a massive warrior from the Targ Dominion, last year's champion of the arena. He laughed, sharp and confident. "Rhythm won't help you when the hits start landing, little human. Let's see how your calm holds up in real combat." Instructor Thalen hesitated, then nodded. "Very well. Cadet Lena, step into the ring." The combat arena shimmered to life. The crowd of students gathered quickly. Nothing entertained them more than watching a weakling be crushed by a champion. Koran towered over her, scales glinting like obsidian armor. "Don't worry, small one. I'll try not to break you." Lena only bowed slightly. "Thank you." The whistle blew. Koran moved like a thunderstorm, and one strike could shatter steel. But before his claws even touched her, Lena stepped aside. One step, small, precise. Her eyes didn't waver. Another blow came faster. She leaned away by an inch. Then another. Then a blur. She moved once, only once. And the next thing anyone saw was Koran flat on the arena floor, unconscious. No one saw how it happened. Not even the instructor. The silence that followed was absolute. Lena stood still, lowering her hand slowly. Her breathing steady, her expression calm. When she finally spoke, it was quiet enough that even the whisper of wind carried her words. "I don't like hurting people," she said, "but sometimes you have to end things quickly." The crowd didn't cheer. They didn't mock. They only stared, because for the first time in the Academy's long history, a human had ended the champion instantly, and she had done it with a single, silent move. The arena remained silent long after the fight had ended. The cadets who had come expecting a spectacle of humiliation now stood frozen, unsure of what they had witnessed. Corin, the Targ champion, undefeated in 3 years, was being carried away on a grav stretcher. His vitals flickered weakly on the holo display, but his pride lay far deeper in ruin than his body. Lena, meanwhile, stood exactly where she had been a moment ago, still, unassuming, her hands clasped politely in front of her. Her expression hadn't changed since the beginning of the duel. Instructor Thalen finally found his voice. Class dismissed. No one moved until he shouted it again. That evening, the academy buzzed like a stirred hive. In the mess hall, whispers followed Lena wherever she went. Some cadets watched her with open suspicion, others with awe, a few with fear. She didn't even touch him, hissed Alisari, her luminous skin dimming in disbelief. I heard she used a neural disruptor hidden in her gloves, another muttered. Humans don't have that kind of tech, replied a Shea cadet, his liquid form shifting with unease. At the center of it all, Lena quietly sipped her tea, pretending not to notice the eyes that tracked her every motion. Her friend, if she could call him that, sat across the table studying her carefully. His name was Aaron, a young engineer from Terra Nova, another human colony. His blonde hair was perpetually messy, his uniform slightly unbuttoned and his curiosity entirely uncontainable. Lena, he whispered, leaning forward. What did you do out there? She looked up, calm as still water. I waited. For what? For him to forget to breathe. Aaron blinked. You can't be serious. I am, she said simply, returning to her tea. Every living thing hesitates between motions. You just have to feel when it happens. He stared at her for a moment longer, then chuckled quietly. You're terrifying, you know that? Lena smiled faintly, a small, soft curve of lips that somehow carried both warmth and sorrow. I'm just a student. But the academy didn't see her as a student anymore. By the next morning, rumors had spread beyond the training sector. High-ranking instructors reviewed recordings of the duel, all of which glitched at the exact moment she struck. The Dominion scientists replayed the data in slow motion, frame by frame, but her movement blurred beyond measurable speed. It was as if time itself had hesitated around her. Soon, requests began arriving from elite divisions asking for observation rights, a polite phrase meaning they wanted to test her. Lena received none of those messages directly. Instead, she was summoned to the head instructor's chamber. The chamber was vast and circular, lined with holograms of battles long past. In the center stood head instructor Valar, an old Lysari with eyes like twin stars dimmed by wisdom. Cadet Lena, he said softly, his voice carrying both curiosity and caution. You've caused quite a disturbance. I'm sorry, she said, bowing slightly. It wasn't my intention. Intention is rarely the cause of history, Valar murmured, studying her. You defeated a champion without a visible strike. The data shows something impossible. I just reacted. Reacted, he repeated, his voice trailing like smoke. Tell me, child, what do you feel when you fight? Lena hesitated. Her gaze dropped to the floor. Nothing, she said finally. I stopped feeling. That's how I was taught. Who taught you? Her answer was quiet. My mother. Valar watched her for a long time. Then he turned toward the window, where the city shimmered under the setting suns. You understand, of course, that this academy cannot ignore what you've done. There will be demonstrations, yes, sir, and challenges. She nodded. I expected that. Valar smiled faintly. You are either the calmest child I've ever met, or the most dangerous. Maybe both, Lena said. Outside, the courtyard lights glowed against the approaching dusk. Aaron was waiting for her beneath the towering statues of the Dominion heroes. When he saw her, he frowned. They're going to test you, aren't they? Yes, and you're going to let them? She looked up at the stars that had just begun to pierce the violet sky. I don't like fighting, she murmured. But sometimes you can't avoid it. Aaron sighed. You're too quiet for a soldier. I'm not a soldier, she said. I'm just trying to understand why we fight at all. That night she couldn't sleep. The academy's halls were silent except for the hum of distant energy cores. She walked to the observation deck, a great dome of glass that opened to the cosmos. The stars shimmered like frozen sparks, countless and cold. She remembered her mother's voice, soft and steady. When you face power, Lena, don't meet it with anger. Meet it with stillness. Stillness is stronger than rage. Her mother had been a soldier once, before Earth surrendered to the Dominion. She had never spoken of that war, only taught her daughter how to breathe through the storms. Lena closed her eyes and exhaled. Tomorrow, the testing would begin. The galaxy wanted to see what the quiet human could really do. The next dawn arrived shrouded in mist. Twin suns rose pale over the Academy's towers, their light muted as if even the heavens were holding their breath. Every student was summoned to the central dome, a massive arena that could shift its structure at will. It was said to be the place where the Dominion's greatest champions had once been forged. Today, it would test a single human. Lena stood in the center of the metallic floor, her hands folded behind her back. The dome's ceiling shimmered with mirrored light, reflecting the watching faces of hundreds of cadets. Instructor Thalen's voice thundered through the comm system. Cadet Lena of Earth, by order of the Dominion Council, you will undergo a combat simulation assessment. Failure to endure will result in immediate dismissal. Do you understand? Yes, instructor. Then you may begin. The lights dimmed. The ground rippled, metal bending, shaping itself into a sprawling battlefield. The air thickened, gravity fluctuated. Shadows formed around her, shapes of opponents, each modeled from the data of real warriors, Lysari duelists, Targ gladiators, Vrak sentinels, and they all turned toward her. A hum rose through the dome as the simulation came alive. Then came the first attack. The Lysari struck first, a flash of light, fast as thought. Lena sidestepped by inches, her movement quiet as breath. The duelist's blade carved through the air where she had just stood, missing her by less than a whisper. Another followed, a Targ brute lunging with the strength of 10 men. She ducked, pivoted, and the giant crashed into the ground with a sound that shook the dome. Each enemy came faster, stronger, more merciless. Yet Lena never fought them with rage or haste. She moved as though time itself slowed around her. Each breath, each blink, each step, measured. Her face remained calm. The crowd watched in awe. Even Thalen's stern mask cracked slightly as the human girl danced among her enemies untouched. Still, the simulation adapted. The system began to anticipate her reactions, evolving the patterns of attack. Within minutes, she was surrounded, 7 opponents closing in, no escape visible. Lena exhaled softly. Then she closed her eyes. The audience gasped. The attacks came, swift, lethal, but somehow, impossibly, she moved before each blow landed. A twist here, a lean there, a flicker of motion like a shadow under moonlight. She wasn't reacting. She was feeling, as if she could sense the intention behind each strike before it existed. When the last opponent fell, disarmed and stunned, she stood alone in the quiet hum of the dome. Her hair was slightly out of place. That was the only evidence she had fought at all. The simulation ended. Thalen's voice cracked over the comm, his usual authority tinged with disbelief. UQ passed. The cadets erupted in murmurs. She can't be normal, someone whispered. No one fights like that. She didn't even hit them, they just fell. Lena bowed politely to the observation deck. Thank you, instructor. But her voice trembled ever so slightly. Only Aaron, watching from the upper seats, noticed it. Later that day, he found her by the gardens that hung between the Academy towers, a place of rare quiet among the metal and noise. She was sitting on the edge of the fountain, shoes off, her feet dipped into the cool water. Her gaze was distant, following the ripples. Aaron approached carefully. You did it again, he said. You were incredible, Lena didn't smile. It's not incredible to hurt things that aren't real. They felt real. I know, she whispered. That's what makes it worse. Aaron sat beside her.
Lena, what's happening to you?
She hesitated as if weighing whether to speak. Then softly, when I fight, I hear things. Not sounds, not words. Just emotion, fear, anger, intent. It's like the world is breathing and I can feel where it will exhale. Aaron frowned. That's not human. I know, she said, her voice barely audible. But it's also not alien. It's something else. She looked at her reflection in the fountain, the quiet eyes of a girl who never asked for greatness. staring back with the calm of someone who had seen too much. I think it's what my mother was afraid of. Word spread faster than light. Across the academy, across sectors, across entire systems, the story was told and retold. The human girl who moved faster than sight, who felled champions with a whisper. At first it was rumor. Then it became myth, and myths have a way of turning into threats. By the end of the week, the Dominion Council itself had taken notice. A message arrived at the academy sealed in crimson hologlass. A summons not for training, not for study, but for demonstration. Lena was to face the Hunter. Every cadet knew that name. The Hunter, real name Cale Veer, was no student. He was a Dominion duelist, a warrior bred and trained for single combat since childhood. He had fought in 10 campaigns, ended uprisings, and earned the title of One-Winged Storm for defeating entire squads alone. He was the kind of legend young cadets dreamed of becoming, and the kind of nightmare they never wanted to face. When the announcement came that the human girl would fight him, the academy erupted. Some laughed, some whispered, some prayed. Aaron didn't laugh. He found Lena in the courtyard again, standing in the soft glow of the artificial suns, her gaze lifted to the sky as if trying to read something only she could see. "They can't be serious," he said, breathless. "Kyle Veer isn't a test, he's an execution." Lena turned toward him, her expression unreadable. "It's not about me. It's about them." "Them?" "The Dominion. They need to prove I'm not a danger." Aaron clenched his fists. "So they'll send a killer to calm their fear?" She didn't answer. After a long pause, she said softly, "Aaron, do you ever wonder why humans are afraid of silence?" He frowned. "What do you mean?" "Because in silence," she said, her eyes distant, "we can hear ourselves. And most of us don't like what we hear." The duel was scheduled at dusk under the open sky. By the time the suns began to dip, the amphitheater was filled beyond capacity. Every cadet, every instructor, every Dominion official with clearance was present. Even head instructor Valar stood at the edge of the observation platform, his glowing eyes dim with concern. Lena stepped into the ring, calm, small, her hands resting loosely at her sides. Across from her stood Cale Veer, towering, armored in a black weave that shimmered like liquid shadow. His right arm gleamed with a silver prosthetic, the one wing that had given him his title. He regarded her with cool curiosity. "So," he said, his voice smooth but edged, "you're the human who's making all this noise." "I try not to," she said softly. Cale smiled faintly. "Good, because after today, it'll be quiet again." The crowd held its breath. The signal light flared. "Begin." Cale moved first, fast as lightning, a blur of motion honed by decades of battle. Lena didn't move at all. His blade stopped an inch from her throat. The air seemed to bend. She stepped aside. Just once. Effortless. Cale's momentum carried him forward, and for a moment it looked as if she had vanished. Then, a whisper of sound, and he was on his knees, weapon arm shaking. He looked down in disbelief. His blade had been twisted from his grasp. He hadn't even seen her touch it. The crowd gasped. Kyle rose slowly, fury glinting behind calm eyes. "Interesting," he murmured. "Let's try that again." This time he didn't hold back. He struck with real intent. Feints, reversals, attacks that blurred the line between art and destruction. And Lena danced. Her movements were not violent. They were fluid, like a breeze through tall grass. Every motion Kyle made seemed to collapse before it reached her, every strike dissolving into nothing. Finally, he leapt into the air, spinning, his blade arcing down with the force of a meteor, and Lena simply raised a single hand. When the blade met her palm, a ripple of light expanded outward, not energy but presence. Kyle froze. His weapon shattered like glass. For a long moment, they stood there, the great hunter and the quiet human, staring at one another through the echo of stillness. Then Lena lowered her hand. "It's over," she said quietly. Kyle staggered back. You didn't kill me." She looked at him, her voice soft. "Killing is easy. Ending something without hatred is harder." He said nothing. He only bowed his head, slowly, deeply. When he looked up again, there was no anger in his eyes, only respect. The arena was silent. No one cheered. No one moved. Wheeler stepped forward, voice steady though his hands trembled. Enough. This demonstration is complete. As Lena turned to leave, she heard whispers ripple through the crowd. Not mockery this time, but a different kind of fear. Did you see her eyes? She didn't blink. She stopped him without power, without weapons. What is she? Lena walked through them silently, her gaze lowered, her heart heavy. When she reached the corridor outside the arena, Aaron was waiting. His expression was pale, shaken. You didn't just win, Lena, he whispered. You changed something. I don't know what, but they're scared. She paused, looking down at her trembling hands. So am I, she admitted. That night, while the academy slept, Velar stood alone before his console, re-watching the duel. When Lena raised her hand to stop the hunter's final strike, the sensors detected something strange. A shift in local gravitational time flow. It wasn't technology. It wasn't manipulation, it was presence. Something purely human and utterly unexplainable. Wheeler whispered to himself. Perhaps we have mistaken fragility for depth. The duel with Kale Veer echoed through the Dominion like thunder. Across an empty sky, every world connected. To the Academy had seen the footage and a small human girl, stopping a galactic champion with a gesture that defied every known principle of physics to some. She was a symbol of peace. Proof that grace could overcome violence to others. She was a weapon in disguise, and to the Dominion Council, she was a question that demanded an answer. The days that followed were heavy with scrutiny. Everywhere Lena went, eyes followed. Some filled with awe, others with unease. Conversations fell silent when she entered a room. The instructors spoke less during her lessons, watching her more than teaching her. Even her classmates, and once openly mocking, now whispered her name like a rumor carried by the wind. Aran noticed it first, the distance growing around her. You haven't changed, he told her one morning, meeting her by the training yard. But they have. I know, Lena said quietly. People are afraid of what they don't understand. Then explain it to them, he said, frustrated. Tell them how you do it and what you feel in anything. She looked at him for a long time. I can't explain something I don't understand myself. Her voice wasn't defensive. It was filled with something gentler, sorrow. In the upper chambers of the academy, head instructor Valar attended a meeting that felt colder than any winter. The Dominion Council's holograms flickered around him. 13 towering figures of light, each representing a world older than Earth itself. Her existence disturbs the order, one said. She's a child, Valar countered softly, a disciplined, gentle cadet. She is not just a child, another snapped. The footage reveals distortion fields. Her actions altered measurable time intervals. Valar folded his hands behind his back. Perhaps the problem is that we have never truly studied humans. We've judged them by weakness, not potential, the council murmured among themselves. Finally, the Archon of the Dominion, a figure of pure white energy, spoke. Potential without control is peril. You will confine the human girl to monitored quarters. No training, no public displays. Until further notice, she is under observation. Valar's expression did not change, but his heart tightened. Understood. That evening, guards arrived at Lena's dormitory. They didn't wear armor or weapons, just the insignia of command. But their presence spoke loudly. Cadet Lena, the lead officer said, by order of the Dominion Council, you are to remain under observation until further directive. You will have limited movement within Academy grounds. Lena didn't resist. She simply nodded. May I ask why? For your safety, he said, but they both knew it wasn't true. When they left, Aaron stormed into her quarters. They can't do this. You didn't break any rule. I broke a pattern, she said softly. What does that even mean? She looked out the window, at the endless lights of the capital below. They've built their world on the belief that power must always make noise. I showed them it can be silent. Aaron's anger faded into quiet frustration. You sound too calm for someone being locked up, she smiled faintly. Panic doesn't solve anything. The days passed slowly. Lena spent her hours reading, meditating, or watching the stars beyond her window. The silence didn't bother her. What bothered her was how easily fear grew in people's hearts, like seeds planted in shadow. One night, she woke to the sound of the door sliding open. Valar stood there, pale light from the corridor outlining his tall, graceful form. "You're not supposed to be here," Lena said softly. "I know," he replied. "Neither are you." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Do you remember your mother's name?" Lena frowned slightly. "Ilara." Valar nodded slowly. "We found something in the Dominion archives. A record of a human soldier named Ilara Vance, served during Earth's last resistance war. She was reported missing, near a Dominion research station." Lena's heart quickened. "Missing?" "Yes. The station's logs mention experiments involving temporal resonance reflex. The project was abandoned. The data sealed." "Temporal." Lena repeated the word slowly, tasting its weight. Valar's expression softened. "I don't know if you inherited anything from that project, but your calm, your timing, your presence, it feels like you move between moments." She looked down at her hands. "I don't want to be an experiment. I just want to be me." "I believe you," Valar said, "but the Council won't." He paused, then placed a small silver device on her desk, a keycard with the Dominion's crest. "If they come for you, take this. Go to the lower hangars. There will be a ship." Lena looked up, startled. "You're helping me escape?" "I'm helping you choose," Valar said quietly. "Sometimes survival is the loudest form of defiance." He turned to leave, his luminous form fading into the dim corridor. Lena sat in silence long after he'd gone, the keycard glinting faintly in her hand. Outside, beyond the Academy's walls, the Council's fleet began to assemble. An official decree was issued across Dominion space. The human subject known as Cadet Lena Vance is to be relocated to Central Authority for further study. Full compliance required, but among the cadets, whispers turned into something else, not fear, but loyalty. "She's one of us. She fights with honor. She didn't ask for this." And somewhere deep in the night, Kael'Vir, the hunter she had once defeated, whispered to the stars, "Quiet in class, deadly in action. They have no idea what they're about to awaken." The sky above the Academy was no longer serene. Warships floated like dark constellations, sleek angular silhouettes blotting out the twin suns. Their silent presence carried a single message. The Council has come, every cadet felt it. The air itself grew heavier, charged with something unspoken, fear maybe, or guilt. Lena sat by her window, staring at the distant glint of engines. She had always found comfort in stillness, but this silence was different. It wasn't peace. It was the pause before something broke. A soft chime interrupted her thoughts. The door opened to reveal Iran, breathless, eyes wild. "They're coming for you tonight." Lena blinked, calm as ever. "I know," he threw up his hands. "You know? And you're just sitting here?" "There's nowhere to go," she said softly. "Running would only prove their fear right." Aaron stepped closer, his voice shaking. "You're not a threat, Lena, but they won't see that. You think they'll just take you to talk? No, you'll vanish. And then they'll make sure humans never rise again." Her expression flickered on not fear but sorrow. "Aaron, do you believe I'm dangerous?" He stared at her for a long moment. "No," he said finally, "but I think you're powerful. And the galaxy doesn't know what to do with powerful humans." Night fell. The Academy's lights dimmed as the curfew sirens began to hum across the compound. From her window, Lena could see the flicker of transport lights descending near the eastern hangars. Council enforcers went faceless, efficient. She stood, exhaled, and reached for the small silver keycard Valar had left her. It felt heavier tonight. When the door slid open again, it wasn't Aaron, it was Kael'Vir. The hunter stood tall, his once dark armor replaced by a simpler combat suit, his expression calm but resolute. "They're here," he said quietly. "Valar told me what's happening." Lena tilted her head. "You shouldn't be here." "You have a career to protect," he smiled faintly. "Careers end. Legends don't. And I'd rather stand with something true." She looked at him for a moment, then nodded once. "Then we move." They moved through the shadowed corridors, silent as breath. Kael led the way, his presence commanding, his step steady. Every checkpoint they passed, he used his authority to delay the enforcers. But it wouldn't last long. When they reached the lower hangars, the massive doors loomed before them, lit by crimson security lights. Lena turned to him. "You don't have to follow me any farther." "I do," he said simply. The council calls you dangerous because they see a mirror. You remind them that power doesn't have to roar. She didn't answer, just looked at him with that quiet, unbreakable calm. Then she turned and pressed the keycard into the console. The lock clicked. Lights shifted from red to green. The doors began to open. But they were not alone. From the far side of the hangar, armed figures emerged. 6 Dominion enforcers in gleaming armor. Weapons trained. Cadet Lena Vance, the lead officer, declared. By the order of the Dominion Council, you are under arrest. Step away from the ship. Kale stepped in front of her, his stance sharp as a blade. You'll have to go through me. The officer hesitated. Kyle Veer, this is not your fight. It became mine the moment you made it fear, he said. Lena placed a hand on his shoulder. Don't. Then she stepped forward past him toward the enforcers. Her voice was soft, but carried like a bell in the hangar's vastness. I won't resist, she said. But you should understand something first. The lead officer raised a hand, uncertain. Understand what? Lena closed her eyes. Fear doesn't end with obedience. The air shifted. No weapon moved. No sound was made. Yet every light in the hangar flickered once, twice, and then the officers froze. Not paralyzed, not harmed, simply still. Time itself seemed to pause around her, reality holding its breath. Then, slowly, the lights steadied again. The enforcers lowered their weapons. None of them remembered why they had drawn them. Kyle stared, awed. What did you do? Nothing, she said quietly. I just reminded them what silence feels like. By dawn, she was gone. Vilar found her quarters empty. The window opened to the first rays of twin sunlight. On her desk lay a single note written in steady handwriting. Thank you for teaching me peace. I'll return when they're ready to listen. Aaron found the note hours later. He read it again and again until the words blurred through his tears. She's gone, he whispered. Vaylor stood beside him, eyes on the rising suns. No, he said softly. She's begun. In the days that followed, the academy was never the same. Cadets spoke of her not as a threat, but as a symbol of restraint, of humanity, of the quiet strength that doesn't need to destroy to be seen. Even the Dominion Council's decree changed in tone. The human known as Lena Vance is to be located and observed, unharmed. Her existence represents a potential evolution, and in the quiet corners of the galaxy, stories began to spread of a human girl wandering between worlds, solving conflicts not with force, but with stillness. They called her the Silent Star. The galaxy moved on. Empires still fought, fleets still burned across cold skies, and the Dominion still ruled with order that masked fear. But now, in every academy, in every mess hall and outpost, there was a whisper, a name spoken softly, half in reverence, half in longing. Lena Vance, the Silent Star. No one knew where she had gone. Some said she'd vanished into deep space. Others claimed she'd joined hidden human colonies on the rim, but the truth was quieter than any of them imagined. A small planet turned slowly beneath a single sun, its skies clear, its seas uncharted. There among the cliffs and pale grasses, a young woman lived in solitude. She spent her mornings watching the horizon, her evenings teaching the children of settlers who had fled war. When they asked her why she never fought back against the soldiers who sometimes raided the valleys, she would smile gently and say, because if you fight anger with anger, you feed it. But if you meet it with calm, you starve it. Her students didn't fully understand, but they listened. And slowly the colony changed. Disputes ended before they began. Weapons gathered dust. Peace, it turned out, was contagious. Back in the Dominion Corps, head instructor Vilar stood before the council again. His hair had dimmed with age, but his voice remained steady. She is not a weapon, he said. She is a mirror. She shows us what we fear about ourselves. That power can exist without domination. The Archon regarded him with quiet intensity. And if she returns? Then listen, Valar said. Because when humans speak softly, it usually means they've already made up their minds. Months later, the galaxy trembled once more, not from war, but from a single broadcast. A ship had appeared at the edge of Dominion space, unarmed, broadcasting no threat, only a signal on every known frequency. It carried an image, a young woman standing beneath a bright sky, calm eyes reflecting the light of distant stars. Her voice filled the airwaves, gentle, steady, unmistakably human. I was born in your world, but I belong to none. I learned your ways and I saw your fears. You called me dangerous because I was quiet. But silence is an emptiness and its choice. I will not fight for power. I will stand for peace. And if you seek me, you'll find me not with armies, but with open hands. The message repeated once, then it ended. No coordinates, no demands, no name, only silence. And somehow that silence spoke louder than any declaration of war. In the following months, subtle changes began to ripple through Dominion society. Cadets who once measured strength by aggression began studying restraint. Diplomatic divisions reopened channels with human colonies, not as subordinates but as partners. And the Dominion, for the first time in centuries, signed a treaty written not in conquest but in collaboration. Aaron, now an instructor himself, often told his students about her. He would stand before them, eyes bright, and say, "She wasn't loud. She didn't need to be. Humanity's strength isn't in how hard we strike. It's in how deeply we feel, and how calmly we endure." Sometimes, when the twin sun set over the training fields, he swore he could still hear her voice in the wind. Stillness is stronger than rage. On the quiet planet beyond the rim, Lena stood once more at the edge of the sea. Waves lapped at her feet. The sky stretched wide and gold. She closed her eyes and felt the rhythm of the universe, the pulse that connected every living thing. And for the first time, she smiled without sorrow. She knew the galaxy would change slowly, painfully, but it would change. Because silence, true silence, was not the absence of sound. It was the presence of understanding. That night, a new constellation appeared above the Dominion skies, faint but distinct. Astronomers called it the Silent Star. To some, it was just light. To others, a story of a human girl who ended champions instantly, yet never lost her gentleness. And to those who remembered her best, it was something deeper, a reminder that the smallest voice, when steady and sincere, could echo across the stars.